The sun shone brightly over Windsor Castle. The sky was blue and a few white clouds floated gently. It was a peaceful afternoon. Inside the castle, Prince William sat in his private study. The room was large, filled with books, papers, and folders. His desk was covered with documents about meetings, charity events, and speeches. Even though the castle was beautiful, William felt the heavy weight of his royal duties. His coffee sat on the table, cold and forgotten. He had been working for hours. The soft ticking of the old clock was the only sound in the room. But even with all the work, William was thinking about his family. Not far from the study in a cozy sitting room, Kate, his wife, was playing with their children. Prince George sat on the floor, carefully building a tall tower with wooden blocks. Princess Charlotte was drawing colorful pictures and showing them proudly to her mother. Little Prince Louis ran around the room laughing with joy. The happy sounds of the children made William smile. These small moments were very special to him. Life as a royal was often very busy and stressful, but times like this brought him peace and happiness. Suddenly the silence broke. The phone on William's desk rang loudly. The sound was sharp and unexpected. William's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the screen. It was a call from Sir James Fletcher, his senior aide. James usually didn't call at this time unless something very serious had happened. A feeling of worry washed over William. He picked up the phone quickly. "Your Royal Highness," James said, his voice tense and shaky. "I am very sorry to disturb you, but there is something important." William sat up straight. He could feel that this was not ordinary news. "Mrs. Whittaker has asked to see you," James continued. "It is urgent. She is very upset." William's chest tightened. Mrs. Whittaker was not just a staff member. She had worked for the royal family for over 30 years. She had been like family to William since he was a boy. When Princess Diana died, William was heartbroken. The world seemed dark and cold, but Mrs. Whittaker was always there. She never forced him to talk, but she showed care in quiet ways. She would leave his favorite sandwiches outside his door when he didn't want to eat. She made sure his clothes were ready, his room was tidy, and his favorite books were nearby. She made him feel safe during very hard times. Kate saw William's face from the doorway. She noticed how his expression changed as he listened on the phone. She knew something was wrong. She quietly told the children to keep playing and walked closer. "She's waiting outside, sir," James said softly. "She looks very distressed." William took a deep breath. "Tell her to come in." Moments later, Mrs. Whittaker entered the room. She was an older woman now, her hair gray and her face lined with years of work and kindness. But today her eyes were red from crying, and her hands shook as she held a handkerchief. Kate quickly walked to her side and helped her sit down. William sat across from her, his eyes full of concern. "My dear Mrs. Whittaker," William said gently, "please, tell us what has happened." Mrs. Whittaker looked down at her hands, trying to stop them from trembling. She had always been strong and proud. She never liked to trouble anyone, especially the royal family. But now, she had no choice. "I am so sorry, Your Royal Highnesses, for coming like this," she began, her voice breaking. "I wouldn't have come if it wasn't so serious." She paused, taking a deep breath. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "It's my grandson, Thomas," she whispered. William and Kate listened closely. They knew Mrs. Whittaker's family had faced many difficulties. Her son had died in a car accident years ago, and her daughter-in-law had left soon after. Mrs. Whittaker had raised little Thomas by herself. "He is very sick, sir," Mrs. Whittaker continued, struggling to hold back her sobs. "The doctors say he has leukemia. He needs special treatment, but it's very expensive. I have tried everything. I sold my jewelry, my car, everything I had, but it's not enough. And I'm scared. I'm scared I might lose him." Kate reached out and gently held Mrs. Whittaker's hand. Her own eyes filled with tears. She remembered how kind Mrs. Whittaker had been when she first joined the royal family. She had taught Kate how to handle royal duties, how to stay calm, and how to face the harsh media. She had been like a quiet, guiding light. William's heart broke as he listened. He thought about his own children playing happily nearby. He couldn't imagine watching one of them suffer like this. The pain Mrs. Whitaker was feeling was too great. "You should have told us earlier," William said softly. "You have always cared for us, now let us care for you." Mrs. Whitaker shook her head, wiping her tears. "I didn't want to be a burden, but now, I don't know what else to do." William looked at Kate, who nodded gently. "We will help," William said firmly. "I promise you, we will find a way to help Thomas." For the first time that day, a small, weak smile appeared on Mrs. Whitaker's face. She was still scared, but now she felt hope. The evening sky over Windsor Castle was painted with soft colors of orange and pink. The sun was setting slowly, casting long shadows across the grand gardens. Inside the castle, the mood was different. The air felt heavy as William and Kate sat together in the private sitting room, thinking about Mrs. Whitaker's words. William stared at the small fire burning in the fireplace. The flames danced quietly, but his mind was filled with worry. Kate sat close beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. She could feel the weight on his heart. "William," she said softly, "we must do something. We cannot let Mrs. Whitaker face this alone." William nodded slowly. "I know. She has given her whole life to our family. She has always been there, for us. And now when she needs us the most, we cannot fail her." They both knew it would not be simple. Royal life was not always easy. Even though they had power and resources, there were strict rules about how they could help people close. To them, every action was watched by the public, the government, and the media. If they made a mistake, people might say they were showing favoritism or breaking royal protocol. Still, William's mind was made up. "We will find a way," he said with quiet strength. "I don't care about the rules, not this time." Next morning, William called Sir James Fletcher into his office. James was loyal, smart, and trusted with the most sensitive matters. "James, I need your help," William said firmly. "Of course, sir," James replied, standing tall. "What must I do?" William explained everything: Thomas's sickness, the cost of the treatment, and Mrs. Whitaker's desperate situation. James listened carefully, nodding as he understood the seriousness of the matter. "We will speak with the Royal Financial Advisors," James suggested. "Perhaps we can find a way to fund the treatment quietly without breaking any rules." William agreed. He knew this would not be easy, but he trusted James to find a solution. Meanwhile, Kate visited Mrs. Whitaker. She found her sitting quietly in the small staff cottage on the palace grounds. The room was simple but tidy. Old family photos filled. The shelves and soft sunlight shone through the white curtains. Mrs. Whitaker looked up as Kate entered, wiping her eyes quickly. "Your Royal Highness," she said with a weak smile, trying to stay strong. Kate sat beside her and gently held her hand. "Please call me Kate. You've done so much for us, Mrs. Whitaker. You've always been like family." Mrs. Whitaker's lips trembled. "I never wanted to ask for help, but I'm so scared, Kate. Thomas is all I have left." Kate's eyes filled with tears. She thought of her own children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, and the love she felt for them. She could not imagine the pain Mrs. Whitaker was feeling. "Mrs. Whitaker," Kate said softly, "William and I will do everything we can. You are not alone. We will fight for Thomas together." For the first time in days, Mrs. Whitaker allowed herself to cry freely. She had held in her fear and sadness for too long. Kate hugged her gently, letting her cry on her shoulder. Days passed as William and James worked hard behind the scenes. They met with lawyers, financial advisors, and doctors. Every detail was carefully discussed. They searched for ways to help without breaking royal rules. Finally, a plan was made. William would quietly donate money to a special medical fund through one of the royal charities. The fund would cover Thomas's treatment completely. The donation would appear as part of the charity's regular work, so no attention would be drawn to Mrs. Whitaker or the royal family directly. William sighed with relief when James shared the final plan. "Good work, James," William said. "Now let's not waste any more time. Arrange everything at once. Yes, sir, James replied with a proud smile. Soon after, the hospital was contacted. Arrangements were made for Thomas to be transferred to one of the best children's hospitals in the country. A team of doctors was ready to start the advanced treatment. There was hope now, a real chance for Thomas to recover. One evening, William and Kate visited Mrs. Whitaker again. She opened the door to find them standing there, both smiling softly. Mrs. Whitaker, William said, the hospital is ready. Thomas will get the best care possible. You no longer have to worry about the cost. Everything is taken care of. Mrs. Whitaker gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of hope and relief. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered, her voice shaking. You don't need to thank us, Kate said gently. You've done more for us than we can ever repay. This is the least we can do. Mrs. Whitaker reached out and held, both their hands, her grip tight with emotion. God bless you both, she whispered through her tears. You have saved my grandson's life. As they stood together in that small, warm cottage, the pain of the past few days seemed to melt away. There was still a long road ahead for Thomas, but now there was hope. And for William, Kate, and Mrs. Whitaker, hope was everything. The day finally came for Thomas to be moved to the new hospital. It was a bright morning, but the air was full of nervous energy. Mrs. Whitaker stood next to the ambulance, holding Thomas's small hand. The boy was pale and thin, but his eyes still had a spark of hope. His grandmother had told him that special doctors would help him get better. William and Kate arrived quietly, wanting to support Mrs. Whitaker and Thomas. They both smiled gently as they walked toward them. Hello, Thomas, William said warmly. Are you ready to meet your new doctors? Thomas nodded weakly. Yes, sir. Kate bent down to his level. You are a very brave boy, Thomas. Everyone is going to take great care of you. Mrs. Whitaker's eyes filled with tears again. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She simply squeezed William's and Kate's hands tightly, silently thanking them for everything. The ride to the hospital was quiet. William and Kate followed behind in their car, speaking softly about how strong Mrs. Whitaker had been through everything. She's been carrying this heavy burden for so long, Kate said. But now she doesn't have to face it alone. William nodded. Yes. Now it's in God's hands, and in the hands of the best doctors. The hospital was large, modern, and filled with bright colors to make the children feel safe and happy. Nurses and doctors were waiting as the ambulance arrived. They gently carried Thomas inside, checking his vitals and speaking kindly to him. William and Kate were given special permission to visit Thomas in his room. As they walked down the long white hallway, their hearts grew heavier. Every door they passed had a sick child inside. It reminded them of how fragile life could be. Finally, they stopped in front of room 12. The door was closed. William hesitated for a moment, resting his hand on the doorknob. Are you ready? Kate asked softly. I need to see him, William replied, his voice calm but full of emotion. He slowly opened the door. What he saw inside touched his heart deeply. Thomas was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines and IV drips. His face was pale, but he smiled brightly when he saw William and Kate enter. Prince William, Thomas said softly, his voice weak but excited. William walked to his bedside and gently took Thomas's small hand. Hello, young man. You are very strong. I am so proud of you. Kate stood beside them, her eyes shining with tears. She reached out and gently brushed Thomas's hair away from his forehead. You're in the best place now, Thomas, she said, and you're not alone. Mrs. Whitaker stood quietly in the corner, watching the scene with teary eyes. She felt overwhelmed by the kindness and love shown by the royal couple. In all her years of service, she had never imagined a day like this. The doctors soon entered and explained the treatment plan. They would begin aggressive therapy right away. It would be difficult, but there was a good chance for recovery if Thomas responded well. William and Kate listened carefully, asking questions to make sure everything was clear. After the doctors left, William turned to Thomas and smiled. "You are going to fight hard, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," Thomas replied with a small but determined voice. Kate leaned closer and whispered, "We'll visit you often. And one day you'll be running outside, playing in the gardens just like before." Thomas's smile grew wider. Even in his weakness, he believed them. Their words gave him strength. Days turned into weeks. Each day was a test for Thomas. The treatments were strong and made him feel sick and tired. But every time William and Kate visited, his face lit up with happiness. Mrs. Whitaker stayed by, his side every day, never leaving his bedside. She read him stories, held his hand during the painful treatments, and whispered prayers into his ear at night. William and Kate brought small gifts during every visit, books, puzzles, and toys to keep his spirits up. Sometimes they brought special drawings from George, Charlotte, and Louis to cheer him. One evening, as the sun set and painted the hospital windows in gold, William and Kate arrived again. They found Mrs. Whitaker sitting by the bed, holding Thomas's hand as he slept. "How is he today?" William asked softly. "The doctors say he is responding well," Mrs. Whitaker whispered, her voice full of hope. "His body is fighting." Kate smiled warmly. "That is wonderful news." Mrs. Whitaker looked at both of them with tears in her eyes. "You saved him. I cannot thank you enough." William shook his head gently. "No, Mrs. Whitaker. You saved him. You never gave up. You fought for him when no one else could. We only gave a little help." As they stood together in that quiet room, there was a deep peace between them. The fight was not over, but hope was shining brighter than ever before. Outside, the stars slowly appeared in the night sky, and inside, in room 12, love, courage, and kindness continued to fill the room, stronger than any sickness. Months had passed since Thomas started his treatment. The long, difficult days slowly turned into weeks filled with small victories. His little body fought hard against the sickness. The doctors were amazed by his strength. Each test showed better results. Slowly, the cancer that once threatened his life began to weaken. Mrs. Whitaker stayed by his side every moment. She barely slept, but never complained. She prayed each night, thankful for every small sign of progress. Every morning she smiled at Thomas even when her heart was heavy with worry. Her love was unbreakable. William and Kate continued to visit often. They became like family to Thomas, bringing him comfort, toys, and stories from the palace. The children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, also sent drawings and short videos, telling Thomas to stay strong. These simple gestures filled the hospital room with joy. Finally, one bright morning, the doctor called Mrs. Whitaker into his office. She sat nervously as he smiled warmly at her. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said softly, "the latest results are very good. The cancer is no longer growing. Thomas is in remission." For a moment, Mrs. Whitaker sat frozen. The words felt like a dream, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. When William and Kate heard the news, they rushed to the hospital to see them. As they entered the room, Thomas was sitting up in bed, smiling wider than ever before. "We did it, Prince William," Thomas said with excitement. William knelt beside him, his own eyes filled with emotion. "No, Thomas, you did it. You are the bravest boy I know." Kate hugged Mrs. Whitaker tightly. "Your prayers were answered. He is going home soon." Mrs. Whitaker could not stop her tears. "You saved him. Without your kindness, without your help, I would have lost him." William shook his head gently. "Sometimes all people need is a hand to hold and someone who believes in them. You never gave up, and neither did he." A few weeks later, a very special day arrived. Thomas was finally strong enough to leave the hospital and return home. But William and Kate had one more surprise waiting. That morning, they invited Mrs. Whitaker and Thomas to visit the palace. Thomas had always wanted to see the royal gardens and meet William and Kate's children in person. As they arrived, Thomas's eyes grew wide with wonder. The palace stood tall and beautiful under the bright sun. The grand doors opened, and the royal family waited to welcome them. George, Charlotte, and Louis ran forward with excitement, greeting Thomas like an old friend. "Hello, Thomas," they said together. Thomas smiled brightly. "I brought some drawings for you," he said, holding out colorful papers he had made while recovering. Kate knelt down, gently taking the drawings. "These are beautiful, Thomas. We'll hang them in the playroom." William gently placed his hand on Thomas's shoulder. "There's something we want to show you." They led Thomas and Mrs. Whitaker through the palace hallways. The grand rooms sparkled with light, but they kept walking until they reached a simple wooden door near the private gardens. William stopped in front of the door and smiled. "Behind this door, there's something special." Thomas looked up, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Go ahead, Thomas," Kate encouraged. "Open it." With a little push, Thomas opened the door slowly. What he saw inside took his breath away. The small room had been turned into a bright, cozy playroom, just for him. There were shelves full of books, toys, puzzles, and art supplies. A big soft chair sat in the corner with a warm blanket. On the walls, his own drawings were already framed and hung up proudly. At the center of the room was a large wooden train set, the kind Thomas had always dreamed of playing with. Tears filled Mrs. Whitaker's eyes once again. This is for me?" Thomas asked softly. "Yes, Thomas," William said warmly. "This is your special place. Whenever you visit us, you will always have this room to play, read, and feel at home." Thomas ran into the room, spinning around with joy. The other children followed him, laughing and playing together. Mrs. Whitaker turned to William and Kate, her voice full of gratitude. "You didn't just save his life. You gave him happiness." Kate smiled, wiping a tear from her eye. "That's what family does." As the sun began to set, William stood by the large window, watching the children play together in the gardens. Kate joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You see, Kate," William whispered, "sometimes life brings people into your world for a reason. Mrs. Whitaker once held me when I was lost. Now, we held her when she needed us." Kate smiled, softly. Love always finds a way. And as the stars appeared above Windsor Castle, a simple truth remained. Kindness, even in the smallest actions, can change the world in the biggest ways. In the end, it wasn't royal power that saved Thomas. It was love, kindness, and courage. A simple act of caring can save a life, heal broken hearts, and build unbreakable bonds. As you leave this story, remember, no act of kindness is ever too small. You too may hold the power to change someone's world, just like William and Kate did.